sorry in advance, I have my cheat sheet. I actually just found out that I was telling my story today. So um, anyway, I guess after my first was born, then it seemed like everyone who I talked to kept telling me, oh, every birth is different. Next time it's going to be so different. And I was like, next time? What? No. There's not going to be a next time. But sure enough, my second birth ended up being so different than my first that it's just like really incredible that the same person, laboring in the same sort of conditions can have like very different experiences. So my first daughter was born at home in our teeny tiny little 600 square foot apartment in Vancouver, British Columbia in September. And it was actually really sunny still for that time of year in a place that like rains 360 days of the year. So I remember I biked to work that morning. I was working as a postdoc at the chemistry department. I biked in like I did every day, and I'm sitting there, it's around 10 a.m., and I'm at the microscope, and my water's broke, I assume. I felt this gush of fluid, and I was like, I have not peed myself this whole pregnancy. So there's only really one thing this could be. So I called my midwives, who actually were like 200 feet away from the chemistry department, and went to their office, and they were like, yeah, your water broke. And I was like, oh boy, I'm gonna have my baby today. And in my media-induced delusion of what happens when your waters break. So 3 days later, still no contractions. I talked to my midwives, and we discussed the research. And really, what the research says is that like the longest study that's been done has said that 72 hours, as long as you're not doing vaginal exams, as long as baby's heart rate looks good and mom's not spiking a temperature, then you just continue on and see what happens. So I continued on seeing what happens, and the fourth day came, and I woke up and I was like, I gotta have this baby. So we called in, there was a local group of acupuncturists in Vancouver called AcuMamas that like specialized in going to home births for like particularly this purpose, and basically replacing Pitocin for home births. And they would go around and just stimulate labor. And so they came along and they stimulated my labor, and it actually got contractions going pretty much immediately. And they built, and like things were looking good, and then I took a nap and they were gone. And I was like, son of a bitch. So then I was like, what's next? So then I talked to my midwives, and I was like, I think I'm gonna do the castor oil. I really wanna have this baby. And they were like, all right, it might be a little uncomfortable, but that's probably a good step to get things going. So I took the castor oil cocktail, which works by basically giving you awful diarrhea, and then by making your belly contract, then it is supposed to bring on contractions. So it did. So the fifth day, then I woke up and I was having contractions from the castor oil that I had taken earlier that evening, and I woke up just being like, wow, I'm like seriously doubting my body's ability to like just have this baby. I was having contractions, but it was like 7 minutes apart. And, still I was talking, walking. It was like very, very early labor, if anything. So I had a lot of doubt. And, but we called the acupuncturist back in. They got things going again. And that combined with the castor oil really kicked things into gear. And I think that, I just had, sort of a normal progression of labor for a while. And then I was like, ooh, we get to use all the comfort measures. So I got in the water, and it slowed things way down, like 10 minutes apart. And so my midwives were like, get out. So I got in the shower and slowed things way down. Apparently I was just like really just too relaxed. So I figured out that what my baby really needed to be born was like nagging and coercion. So at some point then I actually was like hanging from a rebozo draped over the door and like swinging, and I had a midwife stimulating one nipple, my doula was stimulating the other nipple, my husband was squeezing my hips, and I was just like, oh, there's so many hands on me, and it worked. I was in transition. I was like, yes, and I was like, get your hands off of me, and they were like, So they got their hands off of me, and then things slowed back down again. I was like, oh. So then I started walking stairs and walking stairs and walking stairs, and this baby really just needed to be like nagged out of me. And so what happened next? So yeah, so then eventually I went through transition, and I like was ready to push, and so I was like, all right, pushing, that means I'm gonna meet my baby soon. So about 3.5 hours later, I fell asleep. I fell asleep in the middle of pushing. My body at that point, I was so exhausted that I literally just fell asleep. And I woke up, my midwives woke me up and said, if you don't push out this baby, then we're going to transfer to the hospital. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna push out this baby now. So I got up and I took a shower, and within an hour, then I pushed out my beautiful baby girl. She had her arm up over her head like Wonder Woman. And that probably contributed to some of it too. But I realized that a lot of the slowing down was probably a lot of my psychological block that I had built up over those first 3 days, saying, I can't do this. But she was born at home, and my second baby was born also at home at our house in Boston after only 6 hours of labor. And it was just like the smoothest process ever. Things picked up, they went, she was born, and now I have 2 beautiful baby girls.